Hi, this is Kevin Trainer. Welcome to part one of my tutorial for chapter 3 of the Zelle 3rd edition Python book. And what I have here on the screen is the pseudocode for what we're going to try to create in this program. We're going to call it integer division 1. Okay, and we're going to be demonstrating the use of integer division in Python. So it's pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of pseudocode. I've got kind of two sections of the pseudocode here. Okay, you can even think of it as 3 sections, right? Let's do this. I can make this. One of the things that we did in the last of the chapters is we emphasized the input process output model. Okay, and what I have here is the pseudocode for what we're going to do. It's kind of organized in terms of input, process, and output. Okay, I haven't labeled it that way. Could I label it that way in my pseudocode? Yeah, I could. Okay, as you're going to see, I'm not going to label my code or comment my code that way. But, could your pseudocode say something like this? Are there pseudocode comments? Well, you're in charge of pseudocode, so you could do this. Yeah, you could have a comment there. Okay, saying that that's a label. Okay, you said that's input. You could say this is process. And you could say this is output. Okay, now would I put those in if I were doing the pseudocode? No, probably not, because it's pretty obvious to me. Pseudocode is a sketch. You're the artist. You decide how detailed the sketch is going to be, right? You're the consumer. Okay, so in the input part of this, we're going to prompt the user for an integer to be used as the dividend. Oh, by the way, I put a link in the schedule for this week to a resource, learn the terms for addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division equations. So in division, right, the number that we're going to divide is called the dividend. The number we're dividing with is called the divisor. And the result is called the quotient. Okay, just as a reminder. Okay, so we're going to prompt for an int to be the dividend, prompt the user for an int to be the divisor. Then you can think of the processing as we're going to calculate the quotient as the dividend integer divided by the divisor. And then the output is we're going to print a pretty message. The quotient is, and then we're going to have a bunch of digits and then a period. If you're putting out a sentence that ends in a whole number, it's okay to end it with a period because nobody really gets confused between a period and a decimal point. And even if they do, well, it doesn't give it a different meaning. And when we do that, we want to use an F string. Okay, so let's get working on this. So I'm going to use PyCharm, and let me do that. I've already got PyCharm open on my other screen, so I'm going to go over to that screen and click on File, New Project, and it's going to pop this up. Okay. And I'm not going to save this project because I've already got a copy of of this that is already completely done. But this would be a good time to review with you how to create a new project. Okay, if I don't want to put it in this directory that I see, like in my case, I want to just put it into my downloads because I use that as a scratchpad area, and I delete everything out of that on a regular basis. Not something that you would typically want to do with one of your projects. But if I don't want to do that, if I don't want the same directory, I click over here on the folder icon. Okay, and I can just point to downloads and click open. Okay, and you can see now I'm pointing at downloads. And I'm going to call this, since I'm not going to keep it around long, I'm just going to call this Zelle Chapter 03 tutorial. Okay. Now, do I have the right interpreter selected? No, I don't. Okay, so you might see this, and if I click on the triangle, you might see this like all shrunken up, and you would have to click here to see it. Okay, but what I want to do is I want to pick a previously configured interpreter, and then I want to go to the drop down. Okay, and the one I want is the Python 3.9 version of E4 Trainer Python course. Okay, but maybe you don't have that option available, in which case you would click on the ... Okay, and then you'd have to pick on the left panel the second line, Conda environment. Okay, and then under interpreter, you again would take the drop down, and I don't see the one that I want, so I'm going to go to the right and click on the three dots, and that came up on my other monitor. And then I'm going to find my virtual environment, and the one that I want, E4 Trainer Python course, is right here. That's pretty typical if you've used it recently. So within that, because I'm on the Mac, the link I'm looking for is going to be in the bin subdirectory, and I'm going to pick Python, and okay. And I'm going to click the checkbox for make available for all projects, and okay. Okay, so now I've got the right name, it's going in the right directory, I've got the right virtual environment, and I create, and it popped up. It asked me if I wanted a new window, and I click and I say yes, and here I get it. Okay, and the first thing it does is it creates this main.py, which I don't really want, so I close that and I delete it. There's my delete. Say okay. All right. And now, what did I say? Let's go back and look. I want to call this integer division 1. Okay, so let's click on the project, new, Python file, integer division 1. Okay, I don't put the .py on it. It starts, and I want to begin with a doc string, so 3 double quotes, and it puts in the closing 3. And I'm going to call this, I'm just going to say demonstrate integer division. That's all we're doing. And it's a proper sentence, capital D for demonstrate and a period at the end. And then 2 blank lines, and I'm going to have the def for main. That header ends in a colon. I'm going to put a pass in there to hold the place of code. And then after main, there's 2 blank lines. there's the call to main, paren, and then an enter to give us one final line that's empty. Okay, that's fine. All right, so let's look at the pseudocode. Prompt the user for an int to be used as the dividend. That looks good. So instead of having you watch me type, I'm going to copy this from my already baked version. Okay. There we are. So we're going to use an input. Please enter an integer for the dividend, colon, space. The space on the end keeps the user from having to type when he's right up against the colon, or she's right up against the colon, or they are right up against the colon. Okay, so the input is going to cause this prompt to happen at the console. A string's going to come back, and then that's going to be fed to int, and so an int value is going to be put into dividend. Okay, what's the next thing that we want to do? Well, we want to do the same thing, but for a divisor. Okay, I've got that in my pre-baked version too. So I'm going to bring that over. Okay, and it's the same thing. You know, the prompt is being fed to input. That's returning a string version of the integer. That's being fed into int, and that's putting in an int value into the variable divisor. Now, I'm going to do something here I don't typically do on a program this short, but I want to show you that we can do it. Okay. You do not have to get to the end of the program to run your test for the first time. Okay. Now, we can test this as it is. Okay. And it tests some things. I mean, it's going to test the prompting, right? So let's right click and say run. And please enter an integer for the dividend. Okay. So let's say 8. Okay. Enter. And then we might say 2 for the divisor. But then the program ends and we don't really know that it got them. We think it did, right? Well, how could we test that? Well, here's what we could do. We could just add a print, parens, and then we could say dividend, comma, divisor. Okay. And then we would know that we got the values. Okay, that's probably a fuller test, right? So let's run that. So what's the dividend? 8. What's the divisor? 2. And then it says 8, 2. Okay. All right, well, that was a test code. We're not going to need that anymore. All right. So let's look back at our pseudocode. Now, so I had said that I kind of put comments into the pseudocode, input, process, output, to remind me that that's the general pattern that we're following. Do I have to put those comments into my code? I don't. When it comes to comments, I'm into the genre of less is more. Okay, so in general, with comments that go into your code, they should state the intention of the block of code that comes after, okay, not give a play-by-play of the action, okay? And I will say that if we put a comment before those 2 lines that said input, well, that would be intention, okay? But the fact is, do we know from looking at this that this is the input? I do, okay? One of the problems with comments is that over time, programmers are in a hurry, they're under time pressure, and they tend to change code but not change comments. Then the comments become misleading. So that's why I'm from the genre of less is more. Would it be wrong to have put a comment up there that said input? No, it wouldn't be wrong. But the fact is that uh, I'm just going to skip a blank line and go on to the processing, okay? And from that, um, uh, that's where I'm going to go next. So I'm just going to bring over the next line, okay? A quotient gets assigned dividend, integer divided by divisor. Okay, that's good. And again, in my pseudocode, I sort of had a comment, well, that's the processing. Yeah, input, process, output, that's process. But do I really have to put that in my code? I don't. Now, as a more junior programmer, I put many more comments in, okay? Um, in my current wisdom, again, less is more. Okay, so that's that. So that's the calculation. Can I test that? Yeah, I can. I can just throw in a print quotient, okay, and do a test. Okay, so let's do that. So let's run this. Dividend 8, quotient 2, prints of 4. Wow, that's working. That's very good. And then what do I have left? Well, if I look over at the pseudocode, I'm going to print pretty output. The quotient is a number, period. And I'm going to use an F string for that. Okay, let's do that. So get rid of our test print because we don't need it. Okay, I'm going to skip a line because now I'm going to the output. Even though I'm not putting a comment here, skipping a line kind of tells the reader I'm doing another thing here. Okay, in which case when you read it, you're going to go, oh, that's output. All right. And here's the code that I'm going to put. Okay. Now, I've got a print without any variables in the inside of the parens. That's going to give me a blank line. Is that the only way to get a blank line? No, it's not. Is that the sophisticated way to get a blank line before a line of output? No, it's not either. But the more sophisticated way to do it, we're not going to cover until we get to chapter 5. Okay? If you already know it, feel free to use it. And then we have an F string, okay? It begins with F, and then inside of it, the quotient is, then in the curly braces, just a variable named quotient, and then a period to end the sentence. And again, using a period at the end of a sentence like this when you're using whole numbers is pretty good stuff. It's never ambiguous. Okay, well, let's give that a run. I'm just going to go down and press the play button again. And the dividend's going to be 8. And the divisor is going to be 2. And it skips a line, which is kind of nice. It gets your attention a little better. And it says the quotient is 4, period. Proper sentence. Everything is pretty as pie. Okay? So, one of the things I want to point out, I'm reading my notes from the last time I did this tutorial. Here's something that you want to make sure that you don't leave in your code. Okay? First of all, you don't want dead code. Now, it's very hard for us to get dead code. That's unreachable code. Right now, right now with the constructs that we have, we typically are going sequentially from statement to statement. So pretty much all the code that we have is all live code. It's all going to get executed. But you don't want any commented code. Here's the thing that we do sometimes. It's a good practice if you do it in, well, if you do it the right way. Okay, so let's say you were thinking, well, do we want to do this integer divide, or do we want to do just the slash, which is the float divide? Go, well, I'm not sure. Let's see what would happen if I did the float divide. So here's what a lot of people would do. They'll copy the code that's already there, and then they'll repeat it, okay? And then they'll take the original code and they'll toggle it into a comment, okay? And then they'll say they'll get rid of one of those slashes, and now it's going to do a float divide. And say, okay, let's test it. So they do it again. So they'll say 8, 2, the answer is 4.0, and then you look at that and you go, oh, no, that's not going to give me the answer I want. So let's do this. Let's toggle the one that's not a comment into being a comment, and let's toggle the one that wasn't a comment out. I think this is the original code that we had. I think that's good. Okay, let's run that now. So we've got 8, 2, it gives us integer 4. That's perfect. Okay, am I done? No. You're definitely not done because you've got commented out code. Okay? Right? Whereas this was a good practice while we were coding. We should never hand this in or put this code into production. Always, before you're done, get rid of any commented or dead code. Okay, so we're going to save that. Whenever we change the program, even if we think we haven't altered the logic, we ought to test it one more time. 8 divided by 2, 4. Now we're done. Okay, so with that, having said that, I'm going to say that we're done. I'm going to leave you to do your own assignment exercise, which is similar to this, but not the same. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.